Tell me about your mother and dad.
They died in the Holocaust.
Yeah. What did your dad...
And my sister also. My sister who went to Holland, to Amsterdam, right after Hitler came to power.
What did your dad do for a living?
We had we were manufacturing men's clothes. It was near Cologne, Dusseldorf in Western Germany. She was a housewife, or whatever. In those days, the women didn't go out to work. I had two sisters, yes. One, my oldest sister, moved to Amsterdam and Holland shortly after Hitler came to power. And then later, somebody persuaded her to volunteer to go on the transport. And of course, she died. And my parents died also in the concentration camp. I grew up in a very small town, and we didn't have a Jewish school or anything. My fellow students, these were a girls' high school. You'll say I became kind of an outcast. On the other hand, my teachers, some of them, not all of them, but some of them went out of their way to be nice to me. We had a synagogue, but as I say, it was a small hick town, so to speak, and we had service only on the high holidays. And in place of a rabbi, which we couldn't afford, it seems, our butcher was leading the service.
At some point, did you leave the town to go to Dusseldorf?
I took some classes. I wanted to learn how to cook, which actually didn't do me much good in the end anyhow, but I did. Now, I wrote about the Kristallnacht, and I was in Dusseldorf at the time.
And you said November 9th and 10th, 1938.
Yes. That was my 20th birthday.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember, and they threw everything out. They came in, they broke the windows, they threw everything, including the piano. They had tremendous strength for this. And the mob downstairs, they cheered as it was going on. And then I went downstairs. I thought I might be able to save something. It was a stupid idea of mine anyhow. And a girl threw a scarf at me, and she suggested that I hang myself for a second. And I remember that.
Did you get a sense that the Nazis were making your life difficult?
Of course. I mean, it was all over.
You mentioned in your article that everything was hurled through the windows. The crowd was cheering.
Sure.
And no sooner had they left when two armed troopers stormed into your house.
Yes.
And they took your host?
Yes.
How did you feel, man? You were...
Well, I thought they were, they were Achtung, and they were, they were playing soldier, Nazis, so to speak, and it was ridiculous, except that it was dead serious. And, but they took him away. And as it happened, my parents were home, and nothing happened to them. Except we had just lost our big house, and we moved into a tiny apartment to Mönchengladbach. And shortly before this happened, and apparently nobody knew about my parents, so nothing happened to them. And if I had been home, I would have missed, so to speak, this whole affair in Dusseldorf.
Newspapers reported that good Germans were collecting items. They weren't looting items, they were collecting items to donate to the poor.
Yeah, if you believe that. The Jews were assessed so much money to have to pay for all the damage that was done.
Then you left Dusseldorf to get home to your parents who lived an hour away. I grabbed my passport,
yes,
and stuffed it inside my bra in case my purse was searched. I didn't know what they would do if they found me out that I was Jewish. Oh my gosh.
Well, you were in a panic at that time. I mean, you don't expect this, and then all these terrible things happen.
Back in home, then what happens to you and your parents and your sisters?
Oldest sister was already in Holland. My other sister, I think it's probably in there too. She and her husband applied for a quota number for the United States. And the biggest mistake I ever made in my life, I waited 2 weeks before I registered also. And the 2 weeks made a difference of 10 years. I think when war started, I think they cut the quota too, considerably. Now, somehow I wrote to a cousin whom I didn't even know, but she lived in London, whether she could find me a job. And she did. And I went to London as a domestic servant, and that saved me.
Describe it a little bit. What was it life like?
Well, number one, I had to work, for 2 years I worked as a domestic servant. So I had to get up at 6 o'clock to serve the, what was it, tea and biscuits. And I did this for 2 years, and then I found a job as a waitress, and that was a big step up to being a waitress. The waits were no pleasure, believe me. And you know, when you have one wait after the other, after a while, you get used to it as much as you can. But then when there is a lull, and then it starts up again, then you get really scared again. At least I did. I don't know how other people. Sometimes it went day and night, sometimes mostly during the night. So you just sat there and waited to be over, and you don't feel very happy about it, believe me.
Were you fearful being in London with all this bombing and sirens?
I was scared, yes. Wouldn't you be scared?
Did you have other maids that were with you, or just you?
Yes, we made the Quakers, what is that, your friends. They were very, very nice to us. And on our day off, not a day, on our few hours off, they got us all together. And so we met the other Jewish maids, and we got to know them. And in England, they play games, even adults. You have, you know, the chairs with one chair missing and the music playing, and you have to play. So that's what we do. But anyway, this way we used to get other people. So we had a nice group of people that we knew being in the same situation.
Did you learn English?
Well, I learned some in school, but of course it was just so soon, and I had to learn it.
Did you know kind of what was happening to your mom and dad and your sister?
In the beginning of the war, before Holland was invaded, I got letters from my parents via my sister in Amsterdam. Later on, I got letters from my parents from New York. And they didn't have email in those days, and you know how long that took. And so they were usually at least 2 or 3 weeks old. So that was the only way I did hear from my parents. And of course, from my other sister in Holland, I didn't hear anymore either. Also, this went via New York.
Your parents, they were stuck in Germany?
Yes, my dad always insisted it's going to blow over. I mean, my mother had a brother in this country who came here as a young man. She also had cousins here. There was no problem about finding somebody who would vouch for us. This was something the other people had a lot of trouble with, but there was no problem there. But my dad always said it's going to blow over. He wouldn't believe this. And it would have been easy. We could have all come here. And so my sister and I are the only ones who survived. I don't know exactly where they ended up. Either somewhere in Poland or in Russia. I officially, I've been saying that they died in Auschwitz, and she left Germany right after Hitler came to power.
So she was in Holland.
She was in Holland.
And then got trapped there.
And the funny thing is, I mean, we had a cousin, I didn't even know him. He was in he was on the St. Louis. And he ended up in Amsterdam. He ran into my sister, and he was a doctor, and he was kind of well known about something or other, and he convinced her to volunteer because he told her it would be so much worse if they would catch her and deported her. And she believed him. That was the last letter I got from my sister. He survived. She didn't.
Do you remember in London when you got the word that Germany had surrendered?
Oh, sure.
This is the BBC Home Service. We're interrupting programs to make the following announcement. It is understood that in accordance with arrangements between the three great powers, an official announcement will be broadcast by the Prime Minister at 3 o'clock tomorrow. In view of this fact, tomorrow, Tuesday, will be treated as Victory in Europe Day.
Well, we were elated. I mean, after our number bombings, I have a picture somewhere where there wasn't the Queen yet, you know, the whole royal family and Churchill on the balcony and everybody down. So I don't know where the picture is, but anyway, I saw it. And I was somewhere in that crowd. King at the time, the future queen was there. She was just a child at that time.
So then, what happened shortly thereafter? Did you have an interest in going back to Germany?
Well, my quota number still didn't come up, and enlisted with the U.S. Army. So I went over to Germany as a
it's called the Allied Civilian
employee. Yeah, right, you've got it there. And first I worked in censorship, and later on I got a job as a translator with the Nuremberg trial. A translator, not an interpreter. The interpreter, you know, is in the court, court. I translated the, whatever you call it, which were read by the interpreter in court. So, all the legal documents.
The censorship division, were these letters coming from where?
Yeah, it sounds very interesting and was very boring. Well, the potatoes in the cellar, and this and that. I mean, of course, sometimes they were hiding something, and it was a special language telling them something else. But that we couldn't prove. So it was really boring. It was these letters. No, just the ordinary people.
Just ordinary people?
Ordinary Germans, yes. And as I say, it was boring. And I remember going to Frankfurt. I walked along the streets and they smelled. You could smell it. All the dead bodies buried underneath.
When you were sent to Nuremberg as a translator,
That I would translate documents which would be read in court. Translating English documents into German, or the other way around.
Translating, whether you were reading something, you said, "My God, that's terrible."
Sure.
You remember your reaction like that?
Yes. But after a while you get used to it. Sad to say, but you get used to it. You go, read all this. Well, I had one kind of friend. My uncle in Germany, he was president of one of the banks, and his vice president, I met him, and he invited me many times over, and apparently, I think that's one of the things, I bought him food for his family, and apparently I had been able to get a hold of a lot of jewelry, and he gave me some of this. This is one wing. Well, the big trials were already over with Goering and so forth. I think they had been, I don't know whether they'd been executed already or not, but it was over. And I got the other trials.
Krupp trial, that was against the...
Yeah, I think that, well, unfortunately that was boring, because there were so many guns and so many this and so many that. The only thing that was interesting about the foreign workers, I forgot what it's called, those who were forced to work for them.
Yes.
There was a special name and I can't remember.
Yeah, the forced labor.
Yeah, forced labor, yes.
To watch
to the court, oh sure, all the time.
Did you?
So, and you put, it's by that time it was in English and in German. So you put one in one ear and the other one in another ear, and you watch and see what the interpreter, how good a job the interpreters were doing, because you heard it in both languages. So anytime we wanted to, we could just go.
And his case was the one against the Einsatzgruppen.
Yes.
And do you remember going to the case, that one?
I remember seeing him there. I may have even translated one of his. I don't remember. He's exactly my age. Mm-hmm. We were both young.
The verdicts came down, and were you there when some of the verdicts, when guilty or not guilty?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, we know when they came up, and that's when we usually went into the courtroom to be there when they were handed down, yes. I felt good. Finally got justice. Didn't make up, they didn't bring them back again. But that's what happened. Well, my sister lived here, so I came to visit her, and the first thing I met was my future husband, and got married, and I've been living in Buffalo ever since.
Well, you're unique.
Very unique.
Yeah. And you're very healthy. I got you.
Thank you. That's what everybody tells me. Yeah.
You're unbelievable.